Lumi Vault. Unlocking ideas worth discussing.
What do we have today?
How does a family that, funded Leonardo da Vinci, produced 2 popes, and essentially invented modern banking, end up with their final heir rotting in a bed that smelled of feces, completely bankrupt?
Yeah, it is one of the most spectacular and frankly bizarre financial collapses in all of human history.
It really is. So today, we are putting the legendary House of Medici on trial.
Oh, I love that framing.
Right. We are looking at their sweeping history through the lens of modern wealth psychology. We want to figure out if they actually understood how to build a sustainable legacy, or if they were secretly falling into the exact same catastrophic traps that destroy modern fortunes today.
Which, spoiler alert, they absolutely were.
Oh, big time. So whether you are an entrepreneur trying to scale a business, a history student trying to make sense of the Renaissance, or just someone attempting to manage your own career and resources without going off the rails, this deep dive is for you.
Because there is a lot to learn here.
Exactly. We're going to reveal the invisible guardrails that keep a legacy standing. And, maybe more importantly, we are going to expose the red flags of total systemic failure.
And to truly diagnose how the Medici lost everything, we first have to look at the mechanics of how they built it from absolute scratch.
Right, because they didn't start at the top.
No, not at all. If we go back to the early 14th and 15th centuries in the Mugello region that's just north of Florence, the Medici were not royalty. They weren't dukes or anything like that.
What were they doing then?
They were heavily involved in the agricultural and wool trades. It was a very, gritty working class foundation.
Florence was the absolute center of the textile industry at the time, right?
It was. But the real money wasn't just in making the wool. The real money was in financing the trade.
Like the banking side of it.
Exactly. See, in the 13th century, Siena was actually the banking center of Italy. But the problem was that the Sienese bankers lent massive amounts of money to foreign monarchs.
Oh, like the kings of England, right, to fund their wars.
Yes. And when those monarchs inevitably defaulted, because, war is expensive and unpredictable, the Sienese banking families were just totally wiped out.
So they took on too much risk.
Way too much risk. So Florence saw this vacuum and swooped in. And a man named Giovanni di Medici was perfectly positioned. He officially founded the Medici Bank in 1397.
Okay, let's unpack this, because he stepped into a highly volatile market where massive banks had literally just collapsed. What did he do differently that allowed the Medici Bank to survive and eventually become the largest financial institution in Europe?
He built a structural information advantage. The Medici were among the very first major businesses to champion a revolutionary system. Have you heard of double-entry bookkeeping?
Okay, I have to stop you there. Writing down credits and debits in 2 columns doesn't exactly sound like a secret weapon for global domination. How does an accounting tweak build an empire?
I know it sounds boring, but think about how a merchant operated before this. A merchant might look at a massive pile of gold in their vault and feel, incredibly wealthy.
Right, because the gold is physically right there.
Exactly. So they might start spending aggressively or taking on more risk. They were completely blind to the fact that their pending liabilities and upcoming debts actually exceeded the gold in that vault.
Oh, wow. So they were flying blind.
Totally blind. They were constantly at risk of over-leveraging because they just couldn't see the whole board. Double-entry bookkeeping fundamentally changed that.
Because it tracks everything.
Yes. By meticulously tracking every single credit against a corresponding debit, Giovanni could see the bank's true net worth in real time.
So it removed the illusion of wealth.
Exactly. And when you look at modern wealth psychology, like the old money versus new money concepts we saw in our sources, the defining characteristic of sustainable, old money wealth is the prioritization of absolute control.
Control over the assets, you mean?
Right. Giovanni wasn't just doing math, he was building a mechanism to mitigate risk. He knew exactly which branches were profitable and which were bleeding cash, which meant he could scale safely while his competitors were just guessing.
That makes total sense. And then once they had that bedrock of control, they stumbled into what looks like the ultimate unfair advantage. In 1433, vast deposits of a mineral called alum were discovered in Tolfa.
And Tolfa was under papal control at the time, which is key.
Right. So for those who don't know, why was alum such a big deal?
Alum was basically the crucial bottleneck of the entire European economy. It was a mordant, which is an essential chemical binding agent used in dyeing cloth.
Without alum, the vibrant colors of Florentine textiles would just wash right out, wouldn't they?
Exactly. And before 1433, Europe had to import almost all of its alum from the Ottoman Empire, so it was expensive and heavily taxed.
So when it's discovered right in their backyard, Pope Pius II steps in and grants the Medici Bank a monopoly on the mining and distribution of Tolfa alum.
A total monopoly. It was incredible.
To translate this into modern terms, Giovanni essentially found a 15th century tech founder discovering a revolutionary sauce product that the entire global economy relies on. And he managed to secure a worldwide patent on it.
It is total market dominance.
But look at this from a modern entrepreneurial perspective. Is securing a massive, singular monopoly like that just pure hustle? Or is that a structural old money move?
Oh, it is deeply structural. A classic mistake new founders make, the quintessential new money trap, is saying yes to everything.
Oh, yeah. Like the serial entrepreneur thing.
Exactly. They get a little bit of success and immediately try to diversify. They start a podcast, they invest in a restaurant, they launch 3 different product lines out of a fear of missing out. And they do all this before they've ever solidified their primary cash flow.
But the early Medici didn't do that.
No, they did the exact opposite. They dug an impossibly deep economic moat around one massive solid stream of revenue. That stream was their banking network combined with that alum monopoly.
So they didn't care about being flashy at first.
Not at all. They cared about securing control over their core asset.
Okay, so the foundation of the skyscraper goes all the way down to the bedrock. We have structural control, we have an information advantage with the ledger, and we have a cash flow monopoly.
A nearly perfect setup.
Right, so how on earth do we get from there to this spectacular collapse?
Well, we get there through the slow, insidious rot of distraction. We have to look at the man who represents the absolute pinnacle of Medici fame.
Lorenzo the Magnificent.
Yes. Lorenzo ruled Florence through the latter part of the 15th century. He was a poet, a brilliant political mind, and famously the patron of Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and Sandro Botticelli.
Okay, I am struggling to see how Lorenzo the Magnificent is the villain of this story.
I know. It sounds crazy.
We are talking about the primary architect of the Italian Renaissance. The world is objectively a better, more beautiful place because of his patronage. Are we seriously framing the funding of the Sistine Chapel as a wealth management failure?
Look, from a cultural and historical standpoint, Lorenzo's patronage was a triumph for humanity. No one is arguing that.
Okay, good.
But we are putting their multi-generational wealth strategy on trial today. And from a financial perspective, Lorenzo's reign was an unmitigated disaster.
Really? A disaster?
Absolutely. He became the classic serial entrepreneur who gets bored with the unglamorous mechanics of his core business and becomes completely addicted to the show.
Ah, so he took his eye off the ledger.
He abandoned the ledger entirely. While he was commissioning masterpieces and writing poetry, he was placing incompetent friends and political allies in charge of the bank's vital branches across Europe.
Oh, no. That never goes well.
Never. The branch manager in London, for instance, started making massive unsecured loans to King Edward V to fund his wars.
Wait, that's the exact same mistake that wiped out the Sienese bankers 2 centuries earlier.
Exactly. They repeated history. Edward V defaulted, the London branch collapsed, the Bruges branch collapsed, and Lorenzo was so distracted by his cultural and political ambitions that he never even audited his own managers until it was way too late.
He was spending the cash flow, but refusing to maintain the engine that actually generated it.
Spot on.
And he treated his own family the exact same way, didn't he? I mean, from what we read, he wasn't building a business succession plan for the bank.
Not at all. He treated his children like a diversified political portfolio.
A political portfolio? Wow.
Yeah. He groomed his eldest son, Piero the Unfortunate, which is a terrible nickname for civil leadership. Then he placed his second son, Giovanni, into the church at a shockingly young age.
And he eventually bought him a cardinal's hat, right?
Right. And Giovanni would go on to become Pope Leo X. And Lorenzo also used his daughter's dowry to cement an alliance with the Pope's family in Rome.
So the shift is happening right here. They're moving away from being bankers who hold the debt of kings, and they are trying to actually become the kings themselves.
Yes, a complete pivot to nobility.
They start arranging marriages to place Catherine de Medici and Marie de Medici as queens of France. Now, on paper, putting your family on the thrones of Europe looks like the ultimate power play. Why is that a flawed strategy to maintain wealth?
Because a crown relies entirely on the stability of the state. If we want to see why the Medici model of chasing titles was so fragile, we have to look at a contrasting model.
Okay, like who?
Let's fast forward and look at the Rothschild banking dynasty from that documentary we reviewed. They operated in the late 18th and 19th centuries. Mayer Amschel Rothschild had 5 sons. He did not try to marry them off to European princesses.
Right, he sent them out to establish the 5 arrows, as they called it.
Yes. He dispatched them to the 5 major financial centers of Europe: London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, and Frankfurt.
So they stayed in finance.
Strictly in finance. The Rothschilds maintained rigorous, hyper-focused financial discipline across borders. They didn't seek out crowns, they sought out infrastructure.
Like what kind of infrastructure?
Well, they funded the Suez Canal for the British government. They financed the massive European railway booms. They invested heavily in De Beers diamonds.
So while the Medici were trying to become the state, the Rothschilds were financing the Industrial Revolution beneath the state.
Precisely.
What is the actual mechanism that makes a Rothschild strategy survive while the Medici strategy crumbles?
The mechanism is transnational competence versus local political dependency.
Okay, explain that a bit more.
Think about the massive political revolutions of 1848 that swept across Europe. Monarchs were overthrown. Titles became meaningless overnight.
Right, the crowns didn't matter anymore.
Exactly. But the Rothschilds survived and thrived because a royal decree doesn't matter if you own the railways and the gold transit. They adhered to the principle of staying focused on actual asset preservation.
Old money principles.
Yes. The Medici traded their productive cash flow engine for political status. But status does not generate revenue if the underlying economy goes bankrupt.
You can't spend a title. So what happens to the Medici when wars break out and they actually need liquid cash?
Total systemic failure. The later generations became defined by reckless spending that drained both their private wealth and the public treasuries they controlled.
We mentioned Lorenzo's son became Pope Leo X.
Yes, and he famously declared, "Since God has given us the papacy, let us enjoy it."
Oh, that's never a good sign.
No. He spent astronomical sums on banquets, art, and even a pet white elephant named Hanno.
A pet elephant?
Yep. He completely bankrupted the Vatican coffers to the point where he actually had to pawn the palace furniture.
And it bleeds back into Tuscany too, doesn't it?
Profoundly. In the 17th century, the Medici dragged the Tuscan state into conflicts like the Wars of Castro. The war effort was so mismanaged and the treasury was so entirely emptied that the state could no longer afford to pay the interest on its own government bonds.
Which means the economy just collapses.
It did. The rural economy of Tuscany became so decrepit that the people had to revert to barter trade.
Wait, hold on. The family that championed double-entry bookkeeping, the literal architects of modern European finance, governed an economy that regressed to bartering for chickens.
It is a stunning, tragic regression, and it culminates in the 18th century with Gian Gaston de Medici, the final Medici Grand Duke. He is the absolute nadir of the dynasty.
The descriptions of Gian Gaston's final years are difficult to even read.
They are grim.
He spent months confined to a bed that reportedly smelled of feces because he suffered a sprained ankle and simply refused to get up. He would occasionally attend state banquets only to vomit repeatedly into his napkin, belch, and shout inappropriate jokes at foreign dignitaries.
It's grotesque. But the most vital part of Gian Gaston's reign for our analysis isn't his personal hygiene. It's the people he surrounded himself with.
Right, his entourage.
Yes. He was entirely isolated by a toxic, decrepit entourage known as the Responti.
Who were the Responti?
They were hundreds of hangers-on. They were essentially paid pensions from the state treasury just to entertain the Duke in his squalor. Their job was to flatter his ego and keep him entirely disconnected from the reality of his collapsing state.
You know, Gian Gaston's life with the Responti mirrors the exact tragic arc of a modern lottery winner who goes broke.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Think about it. Someone suddenly comes into $100 million, and within a year, they are surrounded by a toxic entourage of leeches. The entourage drains their resources, strokes their ego, isolates them from real financial advisors, and completely distorts their reality until the money is just gone.
That is exactly what happened.
The Medici went from being the disciplined architects of European finance to the absolute worst stereotypes of lottery winner indulgence. How does that disconnect happen within the exact same bloodline?
It happens because they failed to transmit financial literacy. A hallmark of new wealth that fails to survive is the refusal to talk about money, values, and stewardship with the next generation.
Right, Giovanni de Medici taught his sons the mechanics of the ledger.
But Lorenzo taught his sons the mechanics of political maneuvering. So by the time we reach Jan Gaston 4 centuries later, the inheritors have no vision, no understanding of how wealth is generated, and zero competence.
And without that transmission of stewardship, you were guaranteed a tragic end.
Guaranteed.
So we reach 1737. The Grand Duchy is practically bankrupt. The population of Florence is plummeted. Jan Gaston dies without a male heir.
The end of the line?
Yeah. The European powers have already decided to carve up Tuscany and hand it over to the House of Lorraine. The Medici political power is officially extinct. It feels like a total unredeemable loss. Is there anything left to salvage at this point?
Surprisingly, there's one final move. It's a buzzer-beater save executed by Jan Gaston's sister, Anna Maria Luisa de Medici.
Okay, who was she?
She was the very last of the Grand Ducal line. She knew the political game was entirely lost. The Lorrainers were coming to take the state, and there was nothing she could do to stop it.
So what did she do?
Well, Anna Maria Luisa recognized that while the political power was gone, the family still possessed an incalculable cultural capital.
The art, right?
Yes, the art, the statues, the libraries, all the accumulated artifacts of 3 centuries of patronage.
So how did she protect it?
In October of 1737, she executes a brilliant, unprecedented legal maneuver known as the Patto di Familia, or the Family Pact.
The Family Pact.
Okay. She legally wills all the personal property and art of the Medici directly to the Tuscan state. But she attached one strict, ironclad condition to the contract.
Which was?
Nothing could ever be removed from the city of Florence or the state of Tuscany. It was to remain for the ornament of the state, for the utility of the public, and to attract the curiosity of foreigners.
Well, she locked it down.
She completely locked it down. And when the new Lorraine rulers arrived, they were eager to liquidate the Medici assets to pay off their own debts.
I bet they were.
But they couldn't break the contract. Anna Maria Luisa's pact is the literal legal reason the Uffizi Gallery exists today. It is why the Medici chapels were not dismantled. She used a legal guardrail to permanently secure the physical legacy of the family.
What I find so compelling about Anna Maria Luisa's final move isn't just the contract itself, but the psychology behind it.
How so?
When we look at modern applications, this isn't a lesson about writing a contract to protect your art collection. It's a lesson about removing ego and setting strict boundaries.
That is a powerful takeaway.
Lorenzo the Magnificent and Pope Leo X let their egos destroy the family's core foundation. But Anna Maria Luisa had the humility to accept that the political dynasty was over, which gave her the clarity to fiercely protect the one thing that actually mattered.
And that is the essence of true stewardship. Recognizing when you have drifted from your core purpose, stripping away the ego, and putting up an unbreakable boundary around what holds real value.
Exactly. So you have to ask yourself, are you building a solid cash flow engine like Giovanni, or are you chasing the Renaissance like Lorenzo?
It's easy to fall into the Lorenzo trap.
It is. Are you spending all your energy optimizing your LinkedIn profile, chasing titles, and obsessing over the flash of networking, which is really just the modern equivalent of royal alliances, while completely neglecting the actual unglamorous skills that make you valuable in the market?
The sweeping arc of the Medici proves that wealth and legacy are not destroyed overnight. They are dismantled slowly by 1,000 small concessions to ego and distraction.
So as you go back to your own business, your own career, and your own resources, I want to leave you with a question to chew on. We all have our own version of the Renaissance pulling at our attention.
We absolutely do.
What magnificent distraction in your life, much like Lorenzo's beautiful but ruinous obsession with status and art, is secretly bankrupting your core focus right now? Figure that out, and you can repair the cracks before the foundation crumbles. Keep questioning the structures around you, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.
That's all we have for you tonight.
Yeah.
Until next time.